While splitting some of his attention towards the way he came from, scared that the undead would suddenly appear, Decem opened the door to his room. "Welcome back." A female's nonchalant voice called out to him. Decem immediately felt angry. To think a woman who probably scraped their heads along the ground for him until now dared to be so nonchalant. He felt like he was being mocked for suffering defeat at the hands of his grandchildren. However, that anger soon subsided the instant he saw the room's situation. It was red. His room was painted completely red. It's blood. The scent of blood was so thick that he couldn't even begin to describe it. He probably failed to notice it outside the room because his nose had been distracted by the scent of his own blood. The remains of the women who were supposed to be here were scattered around the room, and a single chair was placed in the middle of them, likely intentional, with a woman sitting on it. He didn't know her. She wore a splendid-looking full set of armor, carried a helmet in one hand, and held a mysterious-looking staff with 3 curved blades drenched in blood at the end of it in the other. He couldn't understand what method of use the creator of this weapon had in mind when they made it. The woman didn't look like an elf to him, but at the same time, her face had hints of elven characteristics. So was she an elf? And most of all, those eyes. "Yo, pleased to meet you, father." The woman grinned with clear scorn. He finally arrived at the only possible conclusion. "I see. So that's how it is, so you are those kids' mother." The woman's expression went stiff for a moment before returning it to a smile immediately. "Yes, you are right. Those kids, mother. Those wounds. So you were defeated by them, are they so strong? Which ability of theirs made you lose? Tell me, father." He started to open his mouth but stopped it. He didn't have time to play along with her as she was clearly stalling for time. He immediately turned his heels, trying to get away from the room. "Not going to let you." Goo. Pain ran through his legs, making him tumble on the floor. Looking down, he saw that the blade that extended from the strange weapon caught his legs. It tripped him and he was being dragged back into the room by his legs. New wounds opened on his legs and he started to bleed again, but those were trivial compared to the chest wound from that undead or the damage his legs received when he ran from them. But he couldn't understand. There had been some distance between the two of them. Despite that, she immediately caught up with him and attacked his legs. It's like this woman, his own child, was far faster than he could ever be. He felt a strong pressure bearing down on his back. The woman was pressing him down with her feet. Goo. Decem couldn't stand up. Did this mean that she was far stronger than him? Or was it some kind of special skill? Was your chest wound caused by a blade? What about those on your legs? I've heard that you use an earth elemental, so where is that? She fired out questions in rapid succession. He could not feel a hint of tension in her voice. It was true that Decem was deeply wounded. It was also true that he lost Behemoth, but that didn't mean he was weak. He still had his physical strength, which could easily kill any living being around here in a single hit. This Decem, who had lost Behemoth and who only had his physical strength to rely on, tried to run with his full power. Even though he was dulled by the pain, there was no way that woman could catch him. But he had to acknowledge reality. This woman surpassed him in brute strength. But there was still a doubt left. He didn't remember having a child with such high abilities. He moved his head to see the woman who was pushing down on him. Just as he thought, he really did not know her, and her face felt a little bit off for an elf. What do you want? Why are you doing this to me? That was a genuine doubt from the bottom of his heart. The woman laughed out loud with scorn. The strong can do whatever they want to the weak. Am I wrong? Goo. She was right. That was the principle Decem had lived by till now. That is the morality of wild animals, but it's a suitable ideology for savages who live in the forest without proper civilization. Did the women who had been here say that? Foolish. The woman let out a large sigh like she was trying to expel the heat that accumulated inside her. And in that instant, the force pressing down on him became stronger. Goo. Gaha. He couldn't breathe from the pressure. Why don't you answer my previous question first? Wait, did you forget it? Are you turning senile? Gaga. The pressure on him gradually increased to the point where Decem could no longer bear it. He could hear the innards of his body creaking around. His mouth, open to take in a breath, could do nothing but expel air. The pressure was slightly lessened after she clicked her tongue, but not enough for him to be able to escape. Decem still had to put in all of his efforts just to take a fresh breath. What attack wounded you like that? Why is this happening to me? From the moment I met those kids, it's the worst, but why is this woman interested in the wounds? Doesn't she know what her children did? They are necromancers who command various undead. No, maybe, it's different. To think 3 people, his children and grandchildren, who rivaled him, no, who surpassed him, appeared at the same time. No, maybe there's a different reason behind it. I see. I thought they were my grandchildren, descendants, but if they are blood relatives, there's another possibility. Perhaps they are my father's. Impossible. These are my half-siblings. Wasn't that the most logical answer to all of this? His father was an elven hero who was the strongest fencer. T.N. Light. Warrior equals greater than lightweight, warrior equals greater than fencer. The light. Here is the light in, lightly armored, not light as in luminescence. Is general Japanese RPG lingo for classes like fencers, skirmishers and similar lightly armored martial classes, but in Overlord Maruyama specifically uses it for fencers. They were called 8 Greed Kings not in praise, but in scorn, because they were stronger than anyone else. The weaklings tried to paint over their great deeds and destroy their glory through such petty acts. Decem didn't manage to inherit the fencing talent from that great bloodline, but perhaps this woman here did. So, talk soon or I will kill you, okay? Ka. Talk. I will talk, so please ease off the pressure. He wanted to shout, but he couldn't vocalize. He heard something break inside his body as a sharp pain spread through his chest. His body stiffened from the pain that felt like his innards were being gouged out as he unconsciously drew nails on the floor. I never felt a single ounce of pity for my mother since then, but to think she conceived me after being raped by such a mook, yeah, I do pity her a little. When he thought he heard her talking to herself, the pressure on the leg crushing him increased further. He could hear things inside him breaking one after another, revitalizing the pain he felt previously with every instance. He could taste the blood welling up from his throat, but even if he wanted to let it out, he could at most make it trickle down his mouth. It was stifling. Stifling and painful. Why did he have to go through this? Even though he did nothing wrong at all. Decem struggled with his full might. Just a single breath would be nice, but he wasn't able to free himself. His struggles were meaningless in the face of an overwhelming gap in the level of their strength. Die. He would die. Not much time had passed since he has had similar thoughts, but it was stronger this time. Scared. He was scared. Stifling. It was to flee. Why? This is really irritating. Because of this mook, my mother. Dark. Why? Tears welled up. Why was she doing such cruel things to him? Really? He couldn't breathe. He didn't want to die. Someone. Help. Suddenly, his consciousness came back, but that didn't mean the pain disappeared or that he could breathe. What? Something happened. Your body swelled up. Really? How stubborn. Crack, the sound of all of his bones breaking at once. Pain. Something happened. The world darkened for Decem once again. Just like your ideology, right? You reap what you sow. But it's a bit unfortunate. I wanted to torment you more before killing you. Not a twitch could be seen from her blood-related father anymore. Zeshi moved her gaze to the elf corpses around her. Now that she thought about it, she really didn't need to go this far. It would be a lie to say that her hatred towards her mother wasn't a factor in her killing them all. However, most of all, she didn't wish for the country she loved to do the same things this bastard, whose very existence in the same world as her made her nauseous, had done. She thought that they would be better off dead, so she sank these female elves into a sea of blood. Those people, who optimistically thought that these elves could have achieved happiness elsewhere, probably wouldn't understand Zeshi's actions. In a similar vein, Zeshi couldn't understand those kinds of people either. Zeshi suddenly looked at the entrance. A dark elf girl could be seen in the gap of the still open door. There was no doubt that she was one of those kids that drove the elf king into a corner. Upon seeing the mark of royalty in those eyes, each of a different color, Zeshi let out a small sigh. Decem mistook Zeshi, who he had never met, for their mother. Then, this should be his grandchild, Zeshi's niece. A little surprised at her own unexpected reluctance to kill this child, Zeshi kicked the elf king, already dead from getting his chest caved in, towards the child with her full strength. Ordinary people, No, not even outliers should have been able to avoid it, yet, the girl did, by just jumping aside primly. The corpse hit the opposite wall and bloomed into a bloody flower with a loud sound. To think that she avoided it, her physical ability should be comparatively high. That guy's wound looked like it was from a blade though. The girl, her niece, was holding a black staff, a weapon to bonk with. A glance at that guy's wound was enough to know that it was from a different weapon. He actually did say, "Those kids," so there should be one more at the very least. However, there were also magic items that could create blades of magic or could change themselves into blades. She couldn't disregard the possibility that this girl was the one who wounded the Elf King. Or maybe the other child caused the chest wound while this one smashed his legs. With her staff, or magic. But why did this dark elf girl wound the Elf King? No, there were many things to hate him for. Perhaps she was the same as Zeshi, inheriting her mother's hatred for the Elf King. This could be the case, especially since she looked too young to have her own reason to hate the Elf King enough to wound him so grievously. It was also possible that she just wounded him while frolicking around, but the circumstances just now denied that possibility. Even though he was already dead, the girl avoided the body she kicked instead of trying to retrieve it. Excuse me, why you see? Where are you from, Oni-san? Very shy. A cute girl who was male fantasy made manifest. She was from a different world compared to Zeshi, such a girl asked her a question. But a single glance was enough for her to see that the girl was different inside. The girl didn't look like she was scared by the Elf King's corpse behind her or the massacre done by Zeshi in this room. She can still behave like that after avoiding my attack. Awah. It's highly likely her shyness is just an act, that just makes me more cautious. Well then, what should I do? How should she answer the opponent's question? If possible, she wanted to avoid a battle and feed her false information while taking her time to gain as much information as possible from the other side. But that was impossible. The Elf King's words implied there were multiple enemies. In case this was the one who wounded the Elf King, the fact that there wasn't a single drop of blood on her, there should have been some even if she was healed, meant that there was an overwhelming gap between the strength of the Elf King and this girl. Even if this girl wasn't the one who did it, considering that she was chosen to be the one to give chase, she and her comrades shouldn't be taken lightly. She didn't know how strong they were, but even Zeshi would be in danger if she let them regroup. This was her chance to deal with the girl alone, before her comrades arrived. Instead of gathering intel, she should seize the initiative and defeat her here in a short and quick battle. The idea that your enemy's enemy is your friend is just optimism. You'd more likely be correct to treat them as a new enemy instead. She thought for a moment and then, with a smile to ease up her opponent's caution, Zeshi finally answered. Good morning. I am someone from the Sorcerer Kingdom, but what about you? Are you alone? The girl's face twitched a little. Her shy attitude didn't change, but it slightly felt like she was thinking about something. I can't read her. I've made a mistake. I should have asked a leading question. With this reaction, I can't read if she doesn't know about the Sorcerer Kingdom, if she's from there, or if she sees it as an enemy. Considering that she didn't immediately attack me, the possibility of her being hostile to the Sorcerer Kingdom went down a little, but maybe she is just stalling like me to gather more information. Maybe I would have gotten a different reaction if I had mentioned the Council State instead. She mentioned the Sorcerer Kingdom because there was intel that the Sorcerer King had a dark elf as one of his retainers. They didn't get this information by sending spies into the Sorcerer Kingdom's internal organization. It was because the Thousand League astrologer had confirmed the presence of a dark elf girl beside the Sorcerer King in the battle against the kingdom on the Cat's Plains. They made a detailed report on the Sorcerer King and his forces after using illusions to recreate the scene the Thousand League astrologer saw. They also saw the dark elf who was the only one attending him through the illusions, but they weren't able to see her face clearly due to the blurriness. That was something that couldn't be helped. The Thousand League astrologer couldn't divert her energy to remember a single person as she had to observe the entire battlefield. Plus, what happened after made such a strong impression on her that a lot of other information had flown straight out of her mind. Remembering that vague picture, it felt like this girl wasn't the same one as the dark elf that followed the Sorcerer King back then. They both held a black staff, but the armor they wore was completely different. Well, there was also the fact that she didn't remember anything except for the gear because the illusion was of very low quality. If this girl really was from the Sorcerer Kingdom, what would she have chosen to wear when she planned to come here? The answer. She would have been completely geared up just like Zeshi was. This was a battlefield. Anything could happen here, so it was impossible that someone would appear in their usual attire. Even the defensive gear Kyrie and the Thousand League astrologer wore were chosen only for their ability, disregarding the fact of whether they suited them or not. That said, the cat's plains had been a battlefield as well. Truly strong people didn't use multiple sets of serious battle gear generally. That was because excellent gear was a necessity to ascend to higher tiers of strength, and they would need to polish their skill with a single piece of equipment for that. For example, there was someone skilled with a club who was given an axe after they were recruited into Black Scripture. They had to spend years to get proficient at using it. Going by this logic, the girl from the Sorcerer Kingdom and the one before her should be different people, but there were too many things in common between them for her to come to that conclusion. That's why Zeshi asked a suggestive question to reap some information from her reaction but got nothing in return. I am better at reaping with this scythe though, Zeshi thought, and slightly strengthened her grip on the great scythe. TN. The original is a wordplay on, asking a suggestive question. From the sentence before, which literally translates to, grabbing by a sickle, scythe. Zeshi jokes that she is better at using the scythe in her hands instead. And there was also the fact that the girl was not human. Zeshi could mostly differentiate between the faces of fellow humanoids, but she was not perfect at it. There were some things that one wouldn't be able to perceive if they were not of the same race, so the other races tended to look all the same to her. Why yes. I am alone, I see. Then everyone's probably worried for you. Ha. She lies so easily with such a cute face, absolutely different from how she looks. In that case, any information I can get from her is highly likely to be false. There's no use in continuing this conversation when I already know that she has other allies here. First, I should incapacitate her with force and move to a different place. It's better to draw the truth out of her at a later time, either through magical means or through physical pain. The girl shyly raised her hand, which was not holding the staff, to touch the necklace hanging from her neck. A behavior like that was nothing out of place. It looked like her hand was just searching for something to grip to soothe her unease. One could call it a shy and girly action, but Zeshi, who sensed the disconnect between the girl's appearance and her true self, didn't think so. TCH. Zeshi reduced the distance between them in a single motion, faster than her tongue click could dissipate in the air. While putting on her helmet, she swung the weapon she was holding, Charon's guidance, to graze the ground at the girl's legs. If she could, she would cut her legs. A no-holds-barred attack with her full strength behind it, an attack even the man who was the strongest of her comrades would find difficult to avoid. That attack was deflected back by the girl planting down the staff by her feet. The weapon that could easily cut through even steel was deflected, but Zeshi wasn't surprised. She expected this possibility, but the fact that Zeshi's full-powered attack couldn't even make the girl's hand flinch was beyond her expectations. Then. So she's a martial type. She has now got a clue on the classes held by the Dark Elf girl. Wait a minute, a lightly equipped warrior? No way. Though it's not confirmed that the Elf King was his only child, her appearance. Both Dark Elves and the Elves had the same lifespan, so the speed of their growth should also be the same. What are you doing so suddenly? Is it possible that she was from a different bloodline? Am I thinking too deeply into it? It looked like the Dark Elf girl was muttering about something, but Zeshi continued to swing her scythe, trying to think. She had already decided to fight her. From now, there was no need to talk anymore except if she wanted to stall for time or if she had won. Zeshi burst into the corridor, chasing after the girl who jumped back. Rotating the great scythe in a wide arc to accumulate a lot of inertia behind it, Zeshi swung at the girl's ankles. Swinging such a large scythe meant that she naturally hit the floor and the walls along the way, but that was not an issue. The weapon once held by the savior god of the theocracy, no, of humanity, Sarshana, could easily part the walls and the floor in its path. There was a slight resistance, but it barely slowed down the great scythe. But it was deflected. Again. And again. The three attacks that followed each other like lightning struck at the same spot. All of them were parried by the black staff held by the girl. Her parries were not exactly graceful, but the explosive power in them was massive. The girl's lightning speed was on the same level as her without a doubt. She's pretty good. A warrior on my level. This is bad. I will be at a disadvantage if she is completely focused on defense. She already understood something from this short exchange. According to the Elf King's words, the opponent had allies. If they were also on this girl's level, then Zeshi could only put her full effort into escaping. However, it would be shallow to think that she could run away easily just because the Elf King had managed to escape. If the opponent was not an idiot, they would have some countermeasures in place now after letting the Elf King escape once. That meant, I will deal with her here in a short battle. Killing her, it can no longer be helped. Depending on the situation, I could just return with her corpse and try resurrecting her. Zeshi tried to suppress her urge to look at the girl's navel. Despite wearing a dress like metal armor, her flat and smooth navel was exposed to the elements. The girl was boldly exposing a place stuffed with important organs, a place that's considered vulnerable. That said, thinking that she could wound her deeply by attacking there was far too optimistic. The armor's defense could generally be said to be a sum of the infused magic in it, the metal used to forge it, and its special abilities. At the very least, that abdomen should still be protected by the strength of the magic power in the armor. Still, it lacked protection from the material used to forge the armor. There was no doubt that the defense there was weaker compared to other parts. Then why was she wearing such a thing? She was probably leading the opponent's attacks thereby intentionally exposing it. It's highly possible that this was a trap in waiting. Despite realizing that, Zeshi couldn't help but slightly hope to kill the girl with a single hit by targeting that area. That was why she was trying her best to not look at it. Power of Gaia. The girl suddenly cast a spell, making Zeshi widen her eyes. Ha! Magic. Not a martial class. No, it's not like there are no martial classes that could use a little bit of magic, but, Zeshi could use a little bit of divine magic, but she has never heard of the spell the girl used. It didn't affect her, so it's possible that it was self-buffing magic. If the girl's main class was martial and she only slightly dipped her toes into the caster classes, then she needn't worry much. Still, it would be a serious issue if her main class was actually a caster instead. Being able to choose any approach through the use of myriad spells would make the girl far more flexible than a dedicated warrior at dealing with a wide range of situations. If luck was not on Zeshi's side, it was entirely possible for the girl to overturn the situation with some awesome magic. Zeshi's thoughts about these spells were lacking in detail, only calling them awesome magics, because she was not too knowledgeable about magic casters. That was why she had to be even more on guard now. In her experience, even being able to heal just a bit, like herself, was enough to affect the course of battle. Assuming the worst possible case, that she wasn't a warrior, what type of magic caster could the girl be? She didn't have absolute proof, but by considering their short exchange of attacks, she probably wasn't an arcane caster. She would have been weaker in their melee exchange if she was anything like an ordinary arcane caster. It was more likely that she was a druid or a priest, the kind of caster that was comparatively better at close quarters combat. She could also just be an atypical magic caster, or from other types. Psychic magic was one of them, but unfortunately, Zeshi was even less knowledgeable about those casters. There would be no end to it if she continued her conjectures down this path. It was fine to keep them in a corner of her mind and be on guard against the possibilities. And, taking into account that she was a dark elf, she was most likely a druid, even more so given that she was related to that elf king. Unfortunately, Zeshi couldn't do much if she really was a druid. So instead, she activated one of the two special skills she learned upon mastering the Inquisitor class. She activated it in case the girl was some kind of priest that could use high-tier magic that Zeshi didn't know about. Denounce Heretic. This skill made priests who worshipped a different god expend a little more mana than usual when they used magic around her. It wouldn't show clear effects immediately, but it would slowly start hindering the opponent in a drawn-out battle or if they used stronger spells. She didn't plan to extend this battle but decided to use it anyway in case the opponent came out casting one high-tiered spell after another. Using a skill like this that aimed for a single, very specific effect was probably wasteful when she wasn't sure about her opponent's abilities, but such skills were useless if not activated at the start of the battle anyhow. Elemental Form, Earth. The girl cast another spell unknown to Zeshi, turning her skin to a light brown shade. Changing skin color was probably not the only thing that spell did. She also thought that perhaps the girl was showing her true form, that she was originally not a dark elf but a different race, but it's useless to theorize about that. She should not get caught up in questions that didn't have answers when in a battle with her life on the line. Such gaps in knowledge should only be guarded against. The same went for magic. When she didn't know what some spell did, it was best to keep her conjectures about them to a minimum. Zeshi activated another skill like the one before. Sentence Heretic. It was the other special skill she gained upon mastering Inquisitor. This one also had a similar effect in that it increased the rate of failure of activating a spell. Naturally, mana would be spent even if the spell failed to activate. As she ended up using both of them, she wouldn't be able to use any other Inquisitor skills until their active time ran out, but it couldn't be helped. She would still have the physical durability and resistance against magic that was granted by the Inquisitor class, so it would be tolerable. Zeshi planned for a quick fight, but the battle went in a different direction than what she had hoped for. The present situation was not what she had in mind. For Zeshi, all paths to victory roughly fell into two categories: restrict the opponent by continuously pushing her advantage until they were crushed, or guard against the opponent's attacks while gradually closing their avenues of offense to grind them down. However, the girl came out unharmed through Zeshi's attacks, turning her plan to decide the victory in a single strike into a battle of attrition, where each side took turns slowly bringing out their cards into play. Although it was irritating, Zeshi had to acknowledge that the girl was the one who had control over the field. If this was how it was going to be, then she would follow the opponent's script and wait for an opportunity to derail her plans. Well then, please excuse me. Perhaps 2 spells alone were enough for her, or because she couldn't use more than 2, the girl swung her staff with an apology. It came down with such velocity that Zeshi's hair stood on its ends instantly. She shuddered. Not because the speed of her attack was unbelievably fast, but because she felt the girl's heart was not in the apology. There was no hint of it either in her tone or in her expression. It's like she was apologizing by command, like some kind of puppet. Don't think. That's not the important thing. The attack coming down on her was more pressing right now. This attack was not up to her standards if, as she had assumed, the girl was a warrior. It was just too simple, without even an attempt at a feint. It was impossibly fast, but it was easy enough to receive it or avoid it. Zeshi chose to receive it. She had gotten a general idea of her opponent's evasion and parrying skills, so this time she would measure her strength. Zeshi's great scythe easily held the attack, or that's what she expected, too heavy. She should have been able to receive it easily, but instead, both her elbows and her knees were bent from the force. Forced down, the staff came near her forehead. Zeshi gritted her teeth and with a spirited, HNGH, pushed it away with all her strength. Even though the weapon was pushed back, the girl didn't break her balance at all. However, the staff's recoil made the girl wide open. A chance. Trying not to stare at her defenseless navel, Zeshi activated several martial arts. Greater wind stride, steeled arm strike, greater piercing, greater ability boost, greater possibility sense. It was for this moment that she held back from using martial arts before. Her speed, agility, damage from her attack, piercing damage, and strength were all increased, along with her sixth sense being sharpened to the extreme. She was aiming for a single spot. Her navel, which looked so defenseless. Perhaps it was a trap, but she was confident enough in her ability to break through it if there was one. And most of all, she couldn't resist the hope that she could wound the girl seriously enough to completely turn the tides of the battle to her side. Zeshi had a reason to resolve this battle quickly. She shrunk the distance between them at lightning speed and swung her weapon so fast that the sound left behind by the scythe cutting through the air couldn't catch up with the blade. She then directly hit the girl's soft navel. Zeshi's sudden acceleration due to the rise in her abilities surprised the girl, who couldn't defend herself in time. After some resistance that was more than what she expected, hard enough to make her doubt if it was really skin, her scythe broke through and smoothly pierced her skin. Yes. She couldn't help but smile. Zeshi had a class called Executioner. It greatly increased the damage from a critical hit and sometimes even killed the opponent in a single hit. Originally, it also had the ability to deepen wounds from slashing weapons, but because she used the middle blade to pierce her instead of slashing her with the crescent blades that extended to the sides like wings, that ability wouldn't trigger in this case. Even so, this attack should have damaged the girl considerably. However, her joyful expression soon turned serious. The feeling that she got from her weapon was too strange. especially because she couldn't feel the sensation of her innards being cut. Before she could understand the reason, a black silhouette appeared in her peripheral vision. Instant counter. But it was too late. Just too late. Even though it was only for a moment, her getting caught up in feeling her weapon was a mistake. Gah! A loud sound echoed. Her head received a hard blow from the weapon with a tremendous force behind it. She immediately used pain suppression and jumped back a great distance using greater wind stride. At the same time, she forcefully pulled back the great scythe, dealing more damage to the girl in the process. Her scalp had probably split from the strong blow as blood started to trickle down Zeshi's face. Even though she was suppressing the pain with a martial art, just moving her face was enough to make pain rush through her, making her lightheaded. Zeshi was wearing the armor of the one known as the God of the Wind. Despite that, she took enough damage to make her legs unstable. It had been a long time since she was wounded to such an extent. Heavy recover. While maintaining enough distance that the opponent couldn't reach her in a single step, Zeshi cast the highest tier magic she could use to heal herself. It was far from healing her completely, but it should be good enough as first aid for the time being. While she cast the spell, she continued to observe the girl, guarding against a follow-up attack. And then she widened her eyes. Putting aside the matter of her innards, the girl's abdomen wasn't even bleeding. Still, it's not like she was completely unhurt, evident by her face twisting in pain and the large gash in her earthen-colored skin. Painful. The girl took a scroll out of nowhere and activated it. Heal. It's a spell from a higher tier than the one she used. 6th tier. Why? Such a scroll. This is bad. She probably healed most of her damage from that. I don't know how much health she has remaining, but I am probably the one with more damage unhealed. And the feel of that abdomen. Considering that extreme hardness, it really was a trap. The defense provided by the armor's enchantment probably had the attribute to negate critical hits in that part, but it looked like the girl still felt the pain of getting stabbed in the stomach. The trap worked splendidly at leading her opponent's attacks to that part, but it seemed like the girl would have to pay the price of pain for it. Zeshi clicked her tongue, wondering what wicked person could make this kind of armor. If they knew they were going to be targeted there, they should have added pain resistance to it. This was no different than cursed armor. Zeshi wanted to furiously scratch her head from irritation, but suppressed the urge. She didn't want to do anything that would increase the pain, but she didn't have the option to do that anyway. She couldn't feel happy that she made her opponent use a 6th tier spell. She was not certain that was the last scroll the girl had. Maybe she had multiple stowed away. In that case, there was no chance of Zeshi winning if she fought like usual. But she had a trump card that could kill the girl, however many scrolls of heal she might have. That said, she shouldn't use it yet. She should try other methods first. First of all, she probably wouldn't have used heal for just a scratch. So, considering that she could attack the girl to deal a lot of damage, she should just continue attacking without giving her a chance to use heal. After deciding on that plan, Zeshi took a stance with the great scythe again. While the martial arts that raised her abilities were still active, she approached the girl in a single move. She would aim for the wrists next. What? The girl didn't look like she was going to avoid it. Previously, it was because she wasn't able to catch up with the sudden increase in Zeshi's abilities, but this time it was different. It felt like she didn't even intend to defend. For a moment, the previous exchange of blows surfaced in Zeshi's mind, but there was no choice for her except to attack at this stage. She spun her body like a top right at the edge of the girl's reach, swinging around the great scythe with the greatest inertia possible and hitting the front of the girl's arms. The blade went through her body, causing the girl's arm and armor to fall to the ground with a spray of blood, or not. The girl's wrists were unharmed even after receiving the slash that easily cut through all the armor it had met until now. It felt tough. Completely different compared to her navel. That was obvious because her hands were covered by the armor unlike the navel. Still, it was too hard even after taking that into account. Maybe that armor rivaled the ones worn by the 6 great gods, or maybe she was using a special defense-type martial art. And the most fearsome thing of all was that she received the blow with all of Zeshi's might behind it with just a single arm of hers and didn't even lose her balance. But Zeshi didn't have the time for further thought. Realizing that her right arm was being aimed at, the girl held her staff by her left arm alone and was about to bring it down on Zeshi right at that moment. Remembering the pain from before, Zeshi desperately moved her body using instant counter and evasion to avoid it. She didn't have the time or the space needed to draw the great scythe back to parry that. But she couldn't avoid it. Even if she had adjusted her body with the instant counter, it was difficult to avoid the attack even if she used the martial art at the same time. Zeshi's arm was struck by the blow, but she was ready for it, unlike last time. She was able to activate a martial art at the same time. Greater Reinforced Defense. It was a martial art that increased defense. Reinforce Hide was better at reducing damage, but as a half-elf, Zeshi didn't have a hide to speak of. Despite using a martial art, the pain from the blow coursed through the depths of Zeshi's body nonetheless. Greater Reinforced Defense was nothing but mere consolation. Perhaps it eased the pain just a little bit compared to the previous strike, but that's about it. She killed the whimper that rose up her throat as she didn't want to let the opponent know she was hurt. But this is bad. The exchange this time confirmed the girl's intentions. Thinking back, she had been doing the same since the start. The girl matched her attack for attack. It felt like the girl would bruise her own fist to break her opponent's jaw. It was possible that she was doing this because she couldn't hit Zeshi if they fought normally, but that was probably not the case. The girl intentionally chose to fight in this way. She is confident about defending, a tank like Sidoran. That's why she left her navel exposed. Because she will heal any damage with heal. It was sound to assume that this girl who rivaled Zeshi in her strength was a tank specialized in defense, who could use magic but was slightly bad at offense. That blow from before was just a bit too strong for this to be the case though. Or perhaps that staff was a magic item of enormous power. It couldn't be cut even by a weapon of the 6 great gods, so that was entirely possible. Her suspicion that this girl was probably the same one that had been beside the Sorcerer King deepened by the second. If it was the Sorcerer King, the one who could cast tremendous magic and who led monstrous armies, it was possible that he would have such stupefying gear in his treasury that he could lend out to one of his underlings. After putting a little bit of distance between them, Zeshi keenly observed the girl's movements while taking a stance with the great scythe. The girl stood solidly, rooted to her place. In contrast, she had to jump in and out throughout the exchange. This battle was slowly devolving into a foregone conclusion between a superior and inferior. It's really bad. If you asked her who had the advantage at the present, she would answer that it was the girl. She had received Zeshi's attack with her body and in return hit Zeshi with a single unavoidable attack every time. Health, defense, offense, and healing magic, she couldn't understand which of those the girl placed her confidence in. The fact that the girl chose to trust the simple method of trading blows with her and healing afterward showed that she was confident in winning if she continued to do so. Though it was also possible that she was intentionally fighting with a handicap to make Zeshi reveal her hand. Considering that the girl didn't seem like she intended to attack proactively, it was also possible that she was just stalling for time until her comrades arrived. Zeshi didn't know how strong the girl's allies were, but their addition would solidify the tides even further against her. That could be the reason why this girl chose to fight a war of attrition that was sure to accumulate damage on both sides. There was little Zeshi could do here. The ideal development was to beat her at her own game while playing along with the opponent's strategy. This meant that she would have to hit her while blocking all of her blows, but it was impossible for that to turn out as she had hoped. The girl's armor was impossibly strong, so she would have to approach quite close to her to be able to land an effective hit. Then, the girl would certainly aim for the gap in her defenses that would be created while she was focused on landing the hit. What should she do then? Such a difficult question. Should I use them? Zeshi glanced at the great scythe in her hands for a moment. Used by the god Sershana in the past, Charon's guidance was made from a metal that was yet to be discovered by the theocracy. Its extreme toughness and offensive strength were suitable traits for a god's weapon. It also enabled the wielder to cast death 2 times every 8 hours. And there's even more. Undead Flame, that added negative energy damage to its attacks. Undead Avoidance, which protected the wielder from undead without intelligence. Create Undead, that literally created undead. Disease, that could cause illness. Sleep to the Undead, which triggered a chance to destroy the undead without turn resistance in a single hit. Evil Eye, which lets you select an ability from the different gaze effects. Death Mask, which defended the wielder from gaze attacks while strengthening the fear effect caused by the user. Hand of Glory, which could be used in 2 ways. She could choose among them and use them 5 times every 4 hours. Other than this, it could also summon the special undead, Sparty-8. It was similar in ability to the 5th tier summon, Heavy Skeleton Warrior, but with superior gear. However, they were also weaker in a sense because buffs from special skills wouldn't affect them. This scythe could create a total of 30 every 24 hours, with a limit of 5 being active simultaneously. This weapon was an extremely powerful magic item. It made her feel like it was too soon to start thinking about using her hidden cards. Revealing her own hand while knowing nothing about the opponents would push her into an inferior position on a mental level, which was not good. She should try out a few more things with this simple method of fighting. Excuse me, aren't you coming? Zeshi clicked her tongue loudly at the girl's hesitant question. She wants me to attack. This brat. Then, how's this? Zeshi jumped backward while activating a martial art at the same time. After using double air slash, steeled arm strike, and flow acceleration, 2 blades of air flew from the arc created by the slash of the great scythe. The girl moved into their trajectory. Yes, into their trajectory. Martial arts that produce ranged slashing attacks like air slash were generally weaker than physical hits. Still, one had to be mad to move forward while taking them head on without a second thought. No, I did the same thing to that child in the black scripture. This would be seriously taxing on anyone's mental state. The girl only made an expression of slight pain, which looked too fake, when the blades of aura hit her. The moment she had Zeshi in her range, she swung her staff without even trying to hide her intention. Zeshi managed to avoid it, but barely. The girl's attacks didn't pass a warrior's bar as usual, but they were always the most efficient attacks. In the beginning, Zeshi was able to avoid the attacks somehow, but now, even if she was completely ready, even the slightest delay in response would guarantee the blow connecting with her. Laugh, laugh, make her think that I can see through her. Zeshi pursed her lips into a thin smile and started laughing, loud enough to make the girl hear. She wondered whether or not she had succeeded. Her stiff smile got hit again. It will be bad if I don't preserve enough power to use greater evasion. She tried to create distance between them by retreating backward, but the girl matched her speed by advancing ahead. She couldn't widen the gap at all. Sparty-8. 5 undead appeared like a wall between the girl and her. The girl's first blow immediately took one down. The 5 Sparty-8s would need 5 hits to be dealt with at most, but that was enough for her. Zeshi kicked the wall and leapt in the air, nearly grazing the ceiling while trying to land behind the girl. Just when she thought that the girl had sunk her body down a bit, the girl kicked the floor with enough force to break it into pieces and jumped backward. She probably disliked getting pincered. The Sparty-8s weren't much of an opponent for her, but they could bother her enough to divert her attention for a bit. It was not like the Sparty-8s had been able to damage her after all. After that explosive jump, the girl struck the staff down into the floor, carving out a rut as she quickly came to a stop. Her movements were too haphazard. She was forcibly regulating her explosiveness with her unbelievable physical strength. What a weird movement. Not used to her full power. Or not used to fighting. The girl muttered as Zeshi stood before her with 2 Sparty-8s on both of her sides. Zeshi transmitted. Go. Through her thoughts to the Sparty-8s. The fearless undead swarmed the girl at the same time. Zeshi followed them a moment later. The girl took out another scroll. Firestorm. Fire bloomed outward like a storm that encompassed everything. The raging tongues of flame burned Zeshi, but they disappeared in a moment like they had been just an illusion. Her stinging burns, however, showed that they had been real. Luckily, the damage wasn't that great, probably because it was activated from a scroll. The Sparty-8s could still move but barely, they were on their last legs. All of them would be wiped out if they were hit by the spell once again. Zeshi swung the scythe horizontally with her body as the axis and hit the girl with the pommel of the scythe. She wasn't exactly sure because she had hit the armor, but it didn't feel like the girl was particularly hurt from the hit. The Sparty-8s matched her attack and threw all of their spears at the same time, but a single swing of the staff, strong enough to create a gale around, took care of them. Just as she thought, only Zeshi's attacks could reach the girl. Taking advantage of that moment, Zeshi again started rotating as if she was dancing, going low across the floor like a spider and attacking with a very low slash at the girl's ankles. Meanwhile, one of the Sparty-8s was split into 2, disappearing into the air just like that. But that's what summoned monsters were good for. She slashed with the great scythe as if to gouge out the girl's Achilles tendon. Sparks flew. It was tough there too. Even with steeled arm strike, greater slash strike, and her class abilities, it didn't feel like the weapon managed to penetrate deep. But that wasn't the only reason she aimed for her legs. Zeshi immediately spread her legs apart and gritted her teeth. She swung the great scythe up with all her effort even as it stayed stuck into the girl's legs. She was trying to destroy the girl's balance. But the girl didn't even flinch. She was like a great tree. Impossible. But that was the truth. She used her full might with the opponent's strength in mind, but it felt like she would be the one to lose balance and fall forward instead. There was too much of a gap between the weight she was feeling and the lovely appearance of the girl before her. Perhaps she was using some special skill or a magic item, but it felt like Zeshi was dealing with a humongous tree that had its branches spread towards the sky. Considering the response that she received, it didn't look like she would be able to make the girl fall no matter the amount of strength she put into it. She suddenly felt cold, sensing something bad was going to happen. The girl probably found Zeshi's loss of balance to be a good opportunity. She extended the staff in her right hand as much as possible and brought it down on Zeshi in between the Spartiates trying to obstruct her. An attack with the greatest reach and the most force possible behind it, an attack that made Zeshi's spine go cold. Her stance was too awful to be able to avoid it. The Spartiates couldn't resist it more than a few strands of hair would, so it was useless even if she used them to obstruct it. Still, Zeshi sent an order to Spartiates through her thoughts. Immediately, one of them that was standing beside her tackled Zeshi with its body and sent her flying away. The girl's staff swung down like a black comet and the Spartiate that took Zeshi's place was smashed into tiny pieces. While rolling across the floor, Zeshi gracefully adjusted her weapon and freed it from the girl's legs. In the same motion, she quickly stood up, holding the great scythe in front of her as if to hold back the girl. But the girl didn't follow with an attack on Zeshi. With a violent motion of her body, black winds raged and the Spartiates were blown away into pieces. Amidst the scraps of bone disappearing midair, the girl stood calmly, readjusting her grip on the staff. Then, she started fidgeting like she just remembered something. Should I summon Spartiates again? But I have to confirm something first. Zeshi started spinning the great scythe above her with a deliberate motion. The sound of the blades cutting through the air filled the room. The girl stood still, observing, taking on a completely defensive stance. Little by little, by a nail's length each time, Zeshi approached the girl. With the distance reduced, Zeshi took a sharp breath and swung the considerably accelerated great scythe towards the girl's left wrist. The girl wasn't slow when compared to the blades that were so fast that they physically slashed the air apart. Instead, it felt like she intended to take the hit again like a machine while getting ready to land a blow on Zeshi. Perhaps she had already gotten used to Zeshi's speed, as she didn't falter in her movements. But the blades that originally parted apart the air to aim at the wrist suddenly arced upwards. A change in the pattern repeated till now. Zeshi was aiming for the neck this time. Would the girl die if she sent her neck flying? Improbable, considering what she felt from the previous hits. However, her neck was exposed just like her navel. It could be a trap as well, but if she managed to hit her, it would be highly likely that she could hurt her just like when she cut her abdomen. If she did manage to do that, she could probably wound her enough to turn the tide of the battle with all of her class skills put to use in a single strike. From their exchanges till now, Zeshi understood that she was the better fighter. It was for this very moment that she didn't use any feints till now, she only used simple attacks. The girl who got used to Zeshi's simple-minded attacks would be taken by surprise by the sudden change just like when she used martial arts before, and would fail to defend her neck. The great scythe slashed the girl's neck. And goo. Zeshi caught the staff's blow in return. She endured the pain but still ended up letting out a whimper. Zeshi took a great leap back and then widened her eyes. Not again. There wasn't even a drop of blood coming out from the girl's neck, but there was a faint slash mark left behind. It was impossible for the girl to be unhurt. Maybe she had an ability that nullifies strikes at vulnerable points. In that case, many of the skills Zeshi had learned wouldn't even trigger. Is she even really alive? Maybe. Is she an undead made by the Sorcerer King? The girl probably sensed Zeshi's discomposure as she hesitantly put a proposal forward. Excuse me. Won't you surrender, please? Why, you see, I will not cause you any more pain if you do that, and will guarantee your safety afterward. Zeshi's impression of that was nauseous, to say the least. It had been the same since before, but she couldn't even sense a hint of hostility or killing intent from the girl's attacks. Whether this could be considered gentleness or something different depended on the person, but it was hard to think that the opponent was being gentle when she was trying to cave her head in just because she wasn't being hostile or showing killing intent. Zeshi felt disgusted from the bottom of her heart by this girl. She could be her niece, but Zeshi didn't feel even a bit of familiarity with her. If the proposal had been from pity or a sense of superiority, she might have felt unpleasant, but then she at least wouldn't have been so disgusted. She couldn't feel such emotions from the girl. It's reasonable if she is just an undead without emotions who is just acting the part. She felt everything about the girl was incoherent, making her wonder if all of her words and actions had been an act. However, that wasn't the important thing right now. Zeshi's personal opinions on her character were irrelevant. The important thing was how she should proceed here to break through the situation and lead to a result that was beneficial to her. She could try acting like she was willing to surrender if that could lead to some advantage. I am fine with Surin. Zeshi suddenly turned silent. That's right. It was better to limit talking to when one needed to stall for time or when one had won. And was the girl winning? No. There wasn't a clear victor yet. The girl had a slight advantage, but that's all it was. In that case, couldn't it be that she started talking because she was stalling for time? TCH. Clicking her tongue loudly, Zeshi again reduced her distance from the girl. Even if she attacked using martial arts or from range, the opponent had the magic from the scrolls. She didn't know how many were left, and where she was storing them, but assuming the worst-case scenario that she still had a lot left, a battle of attrition would be to Zeshi's disadvantage. Luckily, it could be conjectured that the opponent didn't have any means to attack long range except for the scrolls. If she had any, she wouldn't need to use scrolls in the first place. Does she have rogue-type classes that focus on using scrolls like this? No, she cast something like a self-strengthening spell by herself, so it's very unlikely. Zeshi didn't have any effective long-range attacks either, so she thought there was no chance of victory in fighting from a distance. Then what about a close-quarters fight? Not a bad idea, so Zeshi chose to fight like this. This time, Zeshi aimed the great scythe at the girl's face. Maybe she couldn't let her face get wounded. The girl deflected the scythe with her staff. Even Zeshi's hands became numb from the force of the collision. The girl counterattacked with her staff, swinging it down in a large arc. Zeshi easily avoided that by activating both greater evasion and instant counter at the same time. They were evenly matched, or maybe not. Maybe the difference in their ability as combatants, the ability to predict an opponent's actions and adapt one's own to match them, was finally showing itself on the surface. The scales were somewhat leaning to Zeshi's side now. That said, no matter what amount of damage she did to the enemy, the girl could instantly turn the tide with a heal, and she would lose in the end with certainty. Should I use them here then? Zeshi held two trump cards. One was a skill that was a surefire way to kill the opponent. The other one was an extremely adaptable skill. She could use the latter to either kill the opponent or to escape, so she shouldn't be using that so easily. Then, should she use the first one here? The girl showed pain when she was hit, but was she really feeling it? There would be no end to it if Zeshi started doubting that. All of Zeshi's conjectures till now were based on assumptions, so they could all be wrong. Perhaps her opponent really was a cute girl who disliked fighting as she appeared to be. Even so, she couldn't help but feel a certain sense of anomaly from the girl. What should I do? If there are others here who are on par with this girl, I am not sure if it's good to use it here, but, ideally, I'll want to kill this girl before she can reveal her trump card. Is it possible though? If asked whether she could do it or not, she could only answer, I don't know. If those were all the scrolls of heal she had, then she could probably succeed, but it was impossible to finish this quickly. Of course, Zeshi continued to act even as she contemplated. She was slashing continuously with her scythe, but she wasn't able to make the girl bleed. All the while, she was receiving counterattacks from the girl's staff. Unlike the girl who only needed to stay still and aim for her, Zeshi had to repeatedly jump in and out of her strike range while swinging her scythe, using her legs to control the distance while handling the weapon for attacks. Without such concentration when trying to evade and defend against the attacks, it would be difficult to defend against the enemy who was countering her while ready to take damage in return. Though the girl was fine with taking hits on her navel or on her armor, her face was the only part she didn't let Zeshi hit. Zeshi started to analyze the information she had gathered until now. Should I just use it? I will win for sure if I use it. The only issue was whether to use it now or later. They exchanged blows multiple times after that. In return for slashing the girl, Zeshi received a clean hit in her flank. She was blown away, the sound of creaking bones echoing through her body. Suppressing her urge to vomit from the pain, Zeshi forced her heels into the floor to stop herself. That blow was unexpected. It was a bit hard to even breathe. Though her side stung from pain, Zeshi made an effort to look nonchalant, sticking the scythe's shaft into the floor and leaning on it. She then crossed her legs, took off her helmet, and sneered to make it seem like she wasn't affected at all by the hit just now. She could do this only because she knew that the other side wouldn't proactively attack her. Well, it can't be helped then. She muttered to herself in a light-hearted tone and resolved herself to it. She would use one of the trump cards to kill the opponent here. The girl didn't try to approach Zeshi, who had opened up some distance between them. That was a saving grace. You there, you asked me to surrender before, right? I want to ask one thing. Are you an undead created by the Sorcerer King? A. B. But why are you asking such a question? Don't you want to ask about how you will be treated after surrender? Answer me. And no, you are wrong. Just as I appear, I am not an undead. I see, Zeshi replied and started thinking. Did the girl not answer immediately because she was confused by the question? Or because she wanted some time to think of an answer? In the first place, I asked her that question because I couldn't figure that out from her appearance. That aside, did she just completely ignore how I brought up the Sorcerer King's name? But, well, whatever. It doesn't matter whether she is an undead or something else, she will die without doubt. Zeshi put on her helmet again and activated the power she was born with. By guiding that power into the weapon once held by a god, she could use the greatest power wielded by the god of death, Sarshana. And so, the goal of all life is death. A clock manifested behind her immediately. This was one of her trump cards that she could only use when she wielded this great scythe. The skill that brought certain death. The skill which made one's death impossible to resist. The skill that hadn't been beaten even once. The girl let out a voice of surprise. A display of emotion so honest that even Zeshi found it genuine. What? So she wasn't an undead? Well, I can very much understand her feelings. Anyone would assume that I was using some mysterious skill with unknown effects if they didn't know about this skill. But, you see, this clock behind me doesn't have any effect by itself. It's nothing more than a herald for the power that will be coming later. Really, it's too soon to be surprised yet. Following that, Zeshi brought out the spells infused in the Great Scythe. And naturally, the one she selected was Death. She heard a click at the same time she activated the spell at the girl. The clock started to count the time. She had won. Zeshi was sure of her victory now. Phoenix Flame. She saw a bird of flames extending its wings behind the girl. Another spell. But, Fufu, it's useless. I don't know what spell you cast, but once I used this power, there's no way you could stay alive. Taking me down before I could use this power is your only chance. Death was generally effective the moment it was cast, but when she used this special skill, it needed 12 seconds to activate. She was unsure what would happen if she was killed before the timer ended, so she chose to take a defensive stance now. Perhaps she found that her spell didn't work. The girl charged at her with the staff in her hands at an unbelievable speed. The girl who did nothing but defend and counter till now turned to offense, probably because she sensed that something was wrong. In this situation where she didn't know what was happening, she didn't choose to take a defensive stance or just observe what would happen. Zeshi had to concede that the girl had some good battle sense. But, Zeshi was the one better at technique and grasping the flow between them. If she only stuck to defense without planning to attack, parrying and avoiding hits was pretty easy. Of course, she couldn't continue to avoid every single attack indefinitely, but doing it for a few seconds was possible. 6. She avoided the girl's consecutive hits. Even heroes, no, not even outliers could clearly see the trajectory of those explosive attacks. It was like she was standing in the same realm as Zeshi. Zeshi observed the girl for a while as her defense didn't require all of her attention and realized that although the girl's physical capabilities were pretty high, she wasn't using them to the fullest extent, that she was not used to the strength. 8. This was something common with those who were strong from birth. Because their body's capabilities were too high, because they could just win through brute force, they tended to disregard finer techniques and things like reading the opponent's movements. Most of the strongmen who were like that were made to eat dirt when they faced the truly strong. They had yet to realize their own arrogance until then. Yes. Just like the girl before her. 11. This is the end. Farewell. Evading another one of the girl's attacks that would have caused cerebral concussion in ordinary people just by grazing them, Zeshi bid farewell to the girl. The girl made her nauseous in a way that was difficult to put into words, but looking at her now, after she had confirmed her victory, she was pretty cute. When she thought about it, the girl was still too young to understand everything. The sin didn't belong to this girl, but to the parents who raised her. Zeshi deflected another blow, while ignoring a chance to attack, and then noticed the abnormality. The girl didn't die. Her mind went blank for a moment. The opponent didn't die from the skill that brought certain death. Then, Zeshi probably miscounted the time. That's the most likely reason. Excluding the time during her training, this was the first time she had fought someone so strong. It probably made her tense and she just didn't notice it. Counting time accurately in such a mental state would be difficult. A simple mistake. 2. So she counted 2 seconds more, slowly at that. But the girl didn't die. The girl was energetically making cute sounds like, EY, and, ya, which didn't match the fearsome blows that accompanied them. But how? She couldn't understand. A skill that absolutely killed. A skill that killed even the undead and the lifeless golems, though even Zeshi couldn't understand how it did that. But it didn't manage to kill this girl. Her attacks hurt Zeshi, so she wasn't an illusion, but what else could it be? Maybe that skill didn't work on dark elves or on blood relatives. Or else, maybe the spell cast by the girl broke through it. If that's the case, then why did the girl know about this skill? Even she herself could only make use of it because of her talent, she didn't know everything about it. It was the same for the few people in the theocracy who knew that she could use this skill. If there's someone who could be said to know everything about it, it would be none other than the original owner of this great scythe, Sarshana. Was that god behind this girl? Seeing as the girl didn't die, she felt that thought strangely plausible. If that was true. Her body went stiff from the confusion and the nervousness, making her take a hit that should have been avoidable. Enough already. Enduring the pain, Zeshi swung her scythe. The slightly reckless attack slashed into the girl's body, but the staff came down on her before Zeshi could see whether it was effective or not. She began to see stars due to pain, but she put a leg forward before she could collapse. Zeshi started to think desperately. Her plan had failed. What should she do now? What would lead to the best outcome possible? She took a lot of hits, but she still had some energy to spare. She was still far from being defeated, but there were the opponent's reinforcements to think about. She had to decide whether to continue the fight or run away. Then, if she decided to run, would she be able to succeed with her speed? She was not sure. In that case, should I reveal the other trump card? It was not a bad idea, but what she experienced just now made Zeshi hesitate. The girl already broke through a skill previously thought invincible. It was hard to imagine that this skill would get nullified as well, but maybe the girl could just disperse it with some other awesome magic. How many scrolls she has, and what magic can she use? There just isn't enough information. She hesitated to reveal all her cards while still not having read the opponent's hand. However, just as she had thought before, time was the girl's ally and her own enemy here. Although she could bear the pain still, it continued to dull her thoughts. Zeshi's smile deepened. Smiles could completely hide her sentiments, thoughts, and emotions from everyone, especially from the enemy. So she smiled, and came to a decision. I won't think anymore. No amount of thinking is useful in this situation without enough information. The only thing Zeshi was clear about was that on top of her revealing one of her cards, the opponent also got proof that they had a way to deal with the said skill. Just this alone was a greater loss for Zeshi than all the damage she had received until now. On activating the final trump card, light coalesced into another Zeshi. Zeshi held 2 trump cards. One is certain death, Or to be more precise, her power made it possible to draw out the trump cards of the former wielders of the equipment she held. The other was from the class she acquired, Lesser Valkyrie, Almighty, a clone. Einherjar. It was slightly weaker than Zeshi, but still an overwhelmingly powerful summon as Zeshi was considerably strong herself. The girl widened her eyes again, letting out an "eh" from surprise. However, it was Zeshi who felt a bad premonition, finding the girl's reaction similar to the one when she revealed her first trump card. Before Zeshi could even send a single command to her clone, the Einherjar, the girl took out a globe. The next moment, a huge earth elemental, which found the corridor a little too cramped to stand in normally, appeared beside the girl. Zeshi was confused again. She thought that it was highly likely that the girl was a druid, but instead of using spells, she used a magic item to summon the elemental. Especially since the elemental didn't seem too strong. She can't summon elementals and she can't use offensive magic either, a self-strengthening type druid. Or am I missing or misunderstanding something crucial? I heard that the one used by the Elf King was a huge earth elemental, is this the one? But it doesn't feel that huge. The earth elemental that was rumored to be used by the Elf King was supposed to be overwhelmingly strong, something not even outliers could win against. Compared to that, the elemental before her was too weak. That said, what appeared to be weak to someone as strong as Zeshi could appear overwhelmingly strong to weaker people. An elemental this weak wasn't too much of an issue. Zeshi was fine with leaving the summon to Einherjar and fighting the girl herself. It would probably take down the elemental quickly, and then it would be 2 against 1. No, let's take down the elemental together in one go. Let's go. Zeshi charged ahead and attacked the elemental with her scythe. Einherjar did the same. Earth elementals had resistance against physical attacks, but the difference in the strength between them was simply too great. The blades left deep gashes in its hard exterior. Naturally, for something that was known for its durability, an attack or two wasn't enough to kill it. But the earth elemental disappeared unexpectedly. Huh? She didn't understand at all. It's not like they took it down. The very next moment, another earth elemental appeared before them. This one was larger than the one before. What was this even? Zeshi didn't feel like it was the same as the one before. Don't tell me it's a sacrificial summon. She never heard of such a spell or special skill, but that phrase was just too appropriate for the situation that she ended up shouting it. She was unsure if this was really a new summon, but the elemental was certainly stronger than the one before. Not even outliers could win against this one. But is it the right thing to do though? Would this earth elemental become even stronger after taking damage or after getting destroyed? Zeshi thought that was impossible however which way you might look at it, but she wasn't completely sure at the same time. She made the Einherjar stand by and observed the girl. The girl was only taking hesitant peeks from behind the earth elemental, and the elemental itself didn't try to attack them immediately. Who is this child really? I can assume that the Sorcerer King made her if she was an undead, but if she really was just a dark elf child. How exactly has such a child been hidden till now? With this kind of strength, she should have been more famous, right? Or was she hidden by some country till now, just like me? The Sorcerer Kingdom was founded only a few years ago. The Empire declared that the area around it originally belonged to the Sorcerer Kingdom in the past, but the theocracy, which existed for a long time, knew it to be a shoddy lie. There never was a Sorcerer Kingdom or a Sorcerer King in this land in the past. The Sorcerer King suddenly appeared out of nowhere, so there were some unconfirmed theories that he was in existence like the past gods, but no way, right? Though, if that really was true, then this girl's the same. No, considering the mark of royalty in her eyes, she was more likely to be related to that guy. Did the Sorcerer King come up with a plan to come over here from a faraway place and unite the non-humans after he got his hands on this girl? She just didn't know, and she had no proof either. She found it difficult to even imagine that this girl was related to the Sorcerer King. But she should assume the worst-case scenario here, that there was a possibility for that to really be the truth. If this girl really belongs to the Sorcerer Kingdom, then it means that the Sorcerer Kingdom had at least 2 people on par with me, including this girl. No way, is the Sorcerer King here too? Zeshi started panicking. How stupid had she been? She had thought about the possibility of the girl being related to the Sorcerer Kingdom, so she should also have thought about this possibility. Normally, it's impossible. No amount of lives would be enough for a king to come to the battlefield where two other countries were fighting their decisive battle. Yet, didn't the Sorcerer King do just that, going and doing whatever he liked in the Holy Kingdom? He made every country realize that a magic caster capable of destroying armies could appear anywhere now. Plus, they also received the hard-to-believe report that he had appeared in the arena as a gladiator right before the Empire became their vassal. Then, it was completely believable that he would come to this elven country moments before its fall. Zeshi fiercely admonished herself. It would be the worst if the Sorcerer King was here as well as she had surmised. This girl alone was enough of a problem. The addition of that undead would wipe away any chance of victory she might have had. The theocracy had yet to complete its analysis of the Sorcerer King's true strength, but it was hard to think that someone who could annihilate an army of over 100,000 soldiers could be weaker than this girl. At present, it's nothing but layering conjecture over conjecture, but everything fell into place, everything really did fall into place. I don't know what the other party is aiming for, but if the Sorcerer King himself is here, should I negotiate? If they managed to steal the Earth Elemental, then that was the same as usurping this country. The girl had the mark of royalty, her eyes. If the elves were shown that as proof of royal lineage and shown the Earth Elemental used by the Elf King obeying this girl, they would surely bend the knee. If they also fought us back, they would be highly popular as well. What perfect timing. What perfect timing. Zeshi started feeling even more uneasy. The theocracy had accelerated its war with the elven country, rushing it to its conclusion only because the Sorcerer Kingdom started invading the kingdom, seemingly to destroy it. But, is that what the Sorcerer Kingdom was truly aimed for? Suddenly, she felt like the different colored cubes of the Rubik's Cube had fallen into their proper places, completing it. Just for a moment, Zeshi, who had never experienced any fear in any battle, suddenly trembled all over her body like she was filled with ice. Yes, if all of this had been the Sorcerer Kingdom's plan all along, then everything fell into place. Their original goal was not the kingdom, but making the elven country come under their rule while hurting the theocracy. In that case, their invasion getting repelled at Nauru and the leaking of information about their invasion was not because they wanted to instill fear of their impending doom into the kingdom's population, but to push the theocracy into making a move at their desired time. No, he aimed for both. Trying to put both countries under his rule in such a short period of time. Unbelievable. It's too unbelievable to think we had been dancing along to the Sorcerer Kingdom's tune all along, simply impossible. She didn't want to acknowledge it, but had to assume the worst-case scenario like before. The Supreme Executive Council evaluated the Sorcerer King as someone to be regarded with the highest level of caution. That, though he was a cut above the rest when it came to scheming, his fearsome power was what should warrant most caution. But if this had been the Sorcerer King's scheme, then the truly fearsome thing was not his power that could kill 100,000 soldiers in an instant. It was not the fact that he commanded subordinates powerful enough to eliminate all the 9 million citizens of the kingdom either. It was his ability to read 100 moves ahead while playing his opponent like a puppet through invisible strings. What they should fear most was his scheming mind. It was hopeless for them if someone who's already strong could also scheme. That would destroy the only weapon the weak had against the strong. Or, was it the demonic Prime Minister Albedo who schemed this? Whoever it was, no, wait. Was it not just these two countries, but also the theocracy? Are they planning to wipe out the soldiers deployed here and declare war? It was true that there were some people who would say that there was no problem no matter how many weak soldiers died. A person who stepped into the realm of heroes was strong enough to surpass a few thousand soldiers. But that was how a strong person would think, and not what an ordinary citizen would think. The theocracy extolled human supremacy and united the country with that notion. The intention behind it was that unless the weak humans united and made the first move against non-humans, they would be the ones to get destroyed instead. And there was a good example of that scenario in the Draconic Kingdom, which bordered the Beastmen. However, were the common populace strong-willed enough to continue to fight if they realized that they were about to be destroyed by this hypothetical person with tremendous power? After hearing of their failure to destroy their arch-nemesis, the elven country, and that their soldiers were wiped out instead, Zeshi made her usual smile, the one she used to hide her heart. It's not that she was happy or that she found something interesting. Actually, her state of mind was the total opposite. It's her despair at having fallen into the trap, into the perfect scheme their enemies had laid out. What should I do? Try to let the soldiers escape? Or escape myself so that I could live? The death of the theocracy's strongest trump card would be a tremendous loss for the nation, so escaping should be the better choice. With her attention diverted to think about the next best move, Zeshi stood still, which then made the girl talk. Excuse me. I am repeating myself, but won't you surrender? I think it's not too late yet. I don't want to kill you. It's not a bad idea considering that she might get information on the opponent. But I can't run away, eh? The girl raised a puzzled voice. Understandable. Zeshi's response didn't match her question from the girl's point of view, but it was logically connected inside Zeshi's mind. That's right. There was nothing else to be done. If this really was the Sorcerer Kingdom's scheme, there's only one way to break through it: fight with the ferociousness of a wounded and cornered animal, kill the girl before her, and destroy the Sorcerer Kingdom's plan along with that. The loss of an individual this strong would greatly derail the Sorcerer Kingdom's plan. Perhaps a most wicked trap was lying in wait for them, but this was their only chance to foil it, and she was the only one able to do it right now. Yes, I am the only one who can save my country. If asked whether the theocracy did enough for her to make her bet her life on them, she would feel complicated emotions. But, from time to time, there were some humans she liked. She saw most of them pass away over her long life, but she thought that they mattered enough for her to wager her life once for the sake of the country they loved. I will probably die, but I will use all my might to kill her. That's good enough for me. Zeshi made her decision. She really did think about retreating for a moment, but if she had to do that, she would like to do it at her own pace rather than escaping narrowly by the skins of her teeth. There was a certain part of her in this battle until now which hadn't been serious about killing her opponent. It was not due to any sentimentality on her part regarding the girl possibly being her niece. Even if the opponent was a mere child, she would cut her limbs and bind her or kill her without hesitation if need be. But she certainly prioritized leaving with her life the most, until now. She would throw it away. If she didn't gamble here, then where else could she? Tomorrow would surely be worse than today. Go! She bellowed. Einherjar attacked, following her command.